You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth, the show that is honest, reveals the facts, truth, and statistics, and does not mess around. Follow me, Taylor Phillips, on Twitter at DT2Phillips. Email me at TaylorGatorPhillips14@yahoo.com. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter at EdSmith313, and go to our website at MichiganSportsTruth.com. Also like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth, and join our Facebook group with the same name. The Michigan Sports Truth podcast on Spreaker is also available on iHeartRadio and SoundCloud. Also a subsidiary of Sports Radio Detroit, thus available on iTunes and Podbean. This podcast is particularly not for entertainment purposes, and the views expressed by the host of this podcast are opinion-based. However, they do not come without facts, research, statistics, and truth, whether other people like it or not, and no matter how harsh or complicated it may be. This is the Michigan Sports Truth, and nothing can ever stop it from being correct.
Hey there, Michigan sports fanatics, and welcome to the Michigan Sports Truth episode 246 on Spreaker. I'm Taylor Phillips along with Ed Smith via Facebook Messenger. We have officially rung in the new year of 2017. Happy New Year, Ed.
Happy New Year to you too, Taylor.
Got plenty to cover, but we'll start with the Lions real quick.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Gonna break down what happened, what went wrong for the Lions in their 31-21 loss to the Green Bay Packers at Ford Field on New Year's Day in their final regular season game. It was a neck-and-neck battle, but the Lions made plenty of mistakes again, missed too many tackles. And the Packers offense, led by Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, took advantage and sealed it. Plus, their rushing defense allowed 153 yards. The Lions' rushing offense did. Total yards for Green Bay, 448. The Lions, 408. Their rushing offense, only 76 yards. The Packers had the ball for 34 minutes and 9 seconds. The Lions, 25-51. The Lions only committed 5 penalties for 30 yards. The Packers, 10 penalties for 75 yards. Matthew Stafford threw an interception in the end zone to pretty much seal it. The Lions' defense pretty much struggled against Aaron Rodgers and his offense. So, Ed, what were your thoughts?
My thoughts on this were, first and foremost, it was a packed crowd at Ford Field. I think it was safe to say this is the biggest game in the young history of Ford Field's history. Fans were ready. They thought, hey, this is a chance to see something we haven't seen before, rarely see. Not just the Lions clinching a playoff berth. Well, in essence, they did witness that because I'm sure they got the updates of the Washington-New York Giants game beforehand. So probably it's a good thing that Washington lost, because if the results of what happened later that night still went on, yikes, we would be talking about a whole different other subject, and possibly of who may not be getting brought back next year. So you had the atmosphere of the crowd getting ready. Unfortunately, though, there was a sense of Lions not taking advantage of it, missed opportunities early on, particularly on a third down where Stafford clearly it was a combination of overthrow and then a mistimed jump by Golden Tate. But either way, the ball sailed over Tate's head, where if he catches it the way he was in stride, that looked to be an easy walk-in touchdown. So that's an easy 7-0 right off the bat. That could have fired up the crowd and really delivered a gut punch of sorts to the Packers. Then when you also consider that the usually reliable Matt Prater this year missed an easy, for his standards, I would say, easy 39-yarder which could have given the Lions an early lead. So you factor in the miscommunication between Stafford and Tate, the missed field goal by Prater, who also, not to mention, missed his one and only kick in the Dallas game the week before as well. So things did not look, it was an early template of, I'm sure, of things were to come for a night of disappointment. Another thing that really was not beneficiary in their way at all, Aaron Rodgers. If I were to cast a vote for MVP today, right now, I'd probably pick Aaron Rodgers, because who else could have done what he has done in these last 6 weeks for his team? The way they were at, losing streaks, just lack of energy, whatever. Something just seems right, but then Rodgers being the leader, being the captain, much like he did when he did his old RELAX radio interview a couple years back. He called his shot. He said, "Hey, we're going to run the table," and I'll be damned, he backed it up, winning 6 games in a row, beating some quality teams, especially the Seahawks, that they just massacred. And now coming in the year, they came in with nothing to lose, and so. That I get. Whereas the Lions, they're reeling off back-to-back losses. Maybe things were starting to choke up a little bit to them. So Rodgers and the Packers took advantage of that. You mentioned with the running game, it wasn't just right. It wasn't one singular thing, though. It was parts of Ripkowski, rather, a guy I'd never heard of before. Something must have happened to Eddie Lacy, apparently, and also Aaron Rodgers using his usual reliable self, broken plays, scrambles, but an issue where even if he can't beat you with his arm, he sure as hell can beat you with his legs, and he did that constantly over and over and over again, especially on third downs or where the Lions needed to desperately get a stop to halt the momentum, get the ball back, that sort of thing. Reminded me a little bit of the game earlier that we saw in Green Bay this season, where the Lions, they got essentially blown out in the first half, came back, made it a game. They probably need to get one more stop, but the defense just couldn't. Rodgers and Green Bay kept getting first down, milking clock until it was too late. Kind of similar to what we saw here, especially in that fourth quarter. Rodgers just took it over completely, making great passes, converting third down, broken plays just turned into big gains, or in one instance, a touchdown where he somehow got almost 9 seconds of free time to throw the ball before anything happened. Sometimes you tip your hat and say, "Hey, that's a hell of a player. He's the reason why he is who he is, and why he's so dependable and valuable to that team." But sometimes you also got to look at your own self in the mirror and say, "Hey, we could have done better. We could have, like I said, that throw from Stafford to Tate, that missed field goal from Prater, just missed opportunities, missed chances, missed plays, and it really cost them, because even with all that, they still had a chance, to possibly do something. It was a 1-possession game, late in the fourth, and the defense, obviously the offense didn't help matters as well. After, fighting back or whatever, scratching to a 14-10 lead, they probably didn't do jack shit for the rest of the second half. You can almost consider the last 10 points, especially that touchdown from Stafford to Anquan Bolden, which kind of mirrored the Rodgers Hail Mary. You can almost consider from last year, or the season before rather, you can almost consider that garbage time. So in terms of what it really mattered, the offense couldn't do a damn thing in the second half, whereas Green Bay completely and utterly took over. And they proved why they are who they are, and why for the 4th year in a row now they are, well, not 4th year because Minnesota won 4, but they're used to this now. 4th year in a row, last game of the season, playing for the division title, everything on the line. They have the composure, they have the quarterback, they have the proven metal to say, "Hey, we know what to do, let's go out and do it," and they backed up what they said they were going to do.
Yep. Now the box score reads: Matthew Stafford was 26 for 41 for 347 yards and 2 touchdowns, besides his interception. Zach Zenner, 20 carries for 69 yards and a score. He's starting to pick it up a little bit. Golden Tate, 6 for 77 and a touch. Speaking of Golden Tate, Marvin Jones, 5 for 76. Eric Ebron, 6 for 61. and Anquan Baldwin 4 for 57. Now for the Packers, Aaron Rodgers 27 of 39 for 300 yards flat and 4 touchdown passes. That's really how good he is.
Oh, man!
Devontae Adams was a key factor as well. 2 touchdowns on 6 catches for just 31 yards. Geronimo Allison also cashed in with a touchdown on 4 catches for 91. And Aaron Ripkowski, 9 carries for 61 yards. Now, with that result in hand, the Packers win the NFC North, and they will play the New York Giants at Lambeau Field in the NFC Divisional Championship. And for the Lions, they go to the Seattle Seahawks and play them in the wild card game bracket Saturday at 8:15 on NBC. We'll get to that momentarily, but between those 2 games, the Lions have decided to retain their head coach Jim Caldwell for next season, and apparently that's because the Lions made the playoffs again, yet they backed in again, simply by once again failing to win the NFC North. But Jim Caldwell, Jim Caldwell evidently got the Lions to the playoffs for the second time in 3 years now. So,
like you mentioned, Taylor, yes, to piggyback a little bit on what you said, Lions did backdoor in, as I alluded to. Really, in essence, it wasn't just Washington that lost to the Giants. It was basically Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie of the New York Giants single-handedly taking over defensively, the starting cornerback for the Giants, making big play after big play. Had a couple of interceptions, including one that sealed the game. So if I'm a Lions fan, I'll be sending gifts to DRC from now to the end of this year, because basically he was the MVP for the Lions on that day, and maybe the reason why we're in the playoffs right now, because you could kind of somewhat excuse, even though you really can't, but hey, the losses to the Giants and Cowboys, okay, 2 quality teams with stout defense. Well, one with a stout defense, the other was out offense, both on the road. And even with this loss here, but even still, it's a division opponent you know so well. You played them twice a year. You got a raucous home crowd. Division title on the line. You would think this is the situation that you want, and you just failed to perform. Now, on to the subject, which is Caldwell. This didn't surprise me. Obviously, I figured, hey, if they made the playoffs, there's probably a good chance he was going to get brought back anyway. I once stated a tweet out that if the Lions didn't win this division, Caldwell should be shown the door because of how things were going with Green Bay at the time, as well as Minnesota as well.
And in Chicago as well.
That didn't come to fruition because I think, Chicago, they were dead all season, so we're discounting that from the conversation. But for Caldwell's case, it's a good thing. Like I said, he should probably be one of the people on that list that should be sending gifts and gift baskets to Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, because I think he also single-handedly saved his job for this season at the very least. Because I highly doubt he would have been brought back if they missed out on the playoffs entirely. Now, when you see on his resume, 2 out of 3 years, got the team in the playoffs, I'm sure he has a good rapport with his players. The players, you haven't seen anything, heard anything about they don't like playing for him or any of that. And not to mention, he's got the backing of Martha Ford. So when you have that in your corner, it's pretty hard to override or overthrow that and say, "Oh nope, you're gone regardless." Even though I think, like I said, long term, if he's here long term, that might stunt the development of the team as a whole. Because I think the talent is there in some instances, but there's still a whole lot of ways to go. And I just don't think Jim Caldwell's the end-all, be-all answer for the head coach position. But we'll see what happens, how he does, obviously, in this playoff game, and how he does next season. But if you were to ask me what I think about this move, I would give it a thumbs down.
Yeah, I'd give that a thumbs down too because of his dumb in-game decisions as usual. That's why he had been called comatose in the past.
Not to mention constantly getting out-coached in the second half. The other team somehow makes adjustments, and yet we don't. We always have to depend on pulling a rabbit out of their ass on our last drive of the game. Sometimes it can't work out that way. Sometimes you need efficient and effective strategies and adjustments coming out of halftime. And I think it was clear to see and say throughout this season that the Lions just did not do that. Right? Matthew Stafford was probably the one making the adjustments more than the head coach. But I digress.
Yeah, that's true. So moving onward, the Seattle Seahawks game in the divisional wild card kicking off once again Saturday at 8:15. That's today on NBC. The Seahawks are 7-1 at home this past regular season. Russell Wilson has some season statistics that are almost as good as Matthew Stafford's. Wilson is right now 353 for 546 for 4,219 passing yards, 21 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. So the Lions have to try to penetrate the Seahawks' poor offensive line, which is ranked 31st in the NFL. So I think the Lions' defense can have an opportunity to bounce back. What do you think?
Possibly. Like you mentioned, the offensive line issues for Seattle. Not to mention the running game was going to be hampered either way with the retirement of Marshawn Lynch this year. Russell Wilson had his own inconsistencies as well throughout early of the year. Now, second half, he turned it around just a little bit, but it was a little bit odd, to say the least, as referenced by many metrics sites, but also referenced on PrivateDetroit.com. Wilson threw the ball 63 more times than he did last year, which resulted in his completion percentage dipping almost, over 3%. Didn't have that many. It seemed to be not that much big plays of terms of yards per attempt, and in terms of his touchdown production, it dropped 13 total from the season before. But still, Russell Westbrook is too many RWs. Russell Wilson. Right, first name Russell, last name Wilson. He is still a valuable player, an option, not just for the offense, but for the team in general. There's no way that we in this position without him as well. So he's always, if the passing game is working for him, you can always depend on his athleticism and his legs. I remember seeing him do that a lot at Wisconsin, and it's definitely been beneficial for him so far in the NFL. So he's got a backup option. So much like Aaron Rodgers the week before, the Lions have really got their work cut out for him in terms of facing a dual threat quarterback. Now, if there is a thing that could work out to Detroit's advantage, it could be the fact that Seattle's defense, not their usual boastful Legion of Boom self, especially now with the fact that safety Earl Thomas, arguably the best defensive player, and arguably their emotional leader on the defense. It's between him and Richard Sherman, in my opinion. He was injured in a game earlier this season against the Panthers. Then it was on Sunday night against the Panthers, suffered an injury. I believe it was a leg injury of sorts. Missed the rest of the season. Even had him contemplating retirement at one point. But it was still a huge loss to the defense. Bill Barnwell noted on Twitter with Seattle, with Earl Thomas on the field this year, their defense only allowed, or their secondary, I should say, allowed 7 touchdowns, got 10 picks, with the average passer rating up just a notch below 80 was 77.8. Now, when you factor in whenever Earl Thomas was out or not on the field, it was 9 touchdowns allowed, only 1 interception produced, and the average passer rating of 99.5. Sheil Kapadia, which you can spell that SHEILKAPADIA, he noted on Twitter that Seattle's pass defense ranks 30th in terms of DVOA since week 12. That was a span in which Earl Thomas, like I mentioned, he's only played 1 quarter total. So, and even Sean Fahey on Twitter as well mentioned, again, it was a screenshot, it was posted on Twitter of a link from to Football Outsiders that, quote, measuring Thomas' absence is not an individual thing. His absence is felt on a macro scale rather than a micro. Over the first 11 weeks of the season, when Thomas was healthy, the Seahawks had a pass defense DVOA of minus 6.8%. That ranked 5th over that time. Since Thomas was first injured, the pass defense ballooned up to 25.8%, which is 26th in the league. That drop in pass defense resulted in a drop-off from 3rd to 17th for the defensive unit as a whole. Thomas is the foundation of the Seahawks pass defense. When he is not available, the structural integrity of that unit is compromised. So the Lions should have a shot, should have a good chance in terms of they want to make some plays. They're going to have to attack the secondary. I know it's risky because you still have other guys. You still got Richard Sherman, of course, out there. But I think where they where they didn't take advantage of against Green Bay, which I thought, listen, Green Bay secondary is horrible, and yet the Lions, for some reason, didn't attack it quite enough. Maybe they could be inclined to do so more in this game, especially now that one of, if not the best defensive player for Seattle is out. That could incline them, hey, let's take some shots downfield to see what we do. The Stafford can make a dime throw, even with his hurt finger, quote-unquote. He can still make a dime throw if he's blitzed and he sees one-on-one coverage. So take more of those chances. Don't be pussyfooted with play calling. I know Zach Center's been great. He's been terrific. But this is a game where Matthew Stafford brought you here with his arm. Let him carry you if need be. So that's got played, helped it out a little bit. But then the flip side of it is there's no one help, even still, as great as Zach Zenner has been. You're facing against one of, if not the best run defenses in the league in Seattle. Bobby Wagner is an absolute key to look out for. And in terms of pass defenses, ours is not exactly the best either, especially when it comes to covering tight end. And guess who happens to have a good tight end of their own in Seattle? Jimmy motherfucking Graham. So, those factor in, and I haven't even gotten to mention the fact that there's the whole elephant in the room of this game being in Seattle, the whole 12-man CenturyLink field, the crowd noise, the atmosphere. They're going to be pumped. That's going to obviously be a mental edge of sorts, as well as just giving an advantage to Seattle, to the Seahawks in general. So it's a tough and tall task, which is why it was very imperative for the Lions to win the division. So A, they could host a playoff game, and B, wouldn't have to go on the road and face a team of this caliber. I know Seattle has not been vintage Seattle. It was from the 2012, 2013, or 2014 when they got the Super Bowl. 2 of those 3 years probably should have won back-to-back Lombardi trophies, if not for an erroneous call on the goal line. But still, this is not a team that you want to overlook in any sense, especially in playoff time, especially with Russell Wilson. I almost did it again, with Russell Wilson. So I'd be nervous if I was on the mindset here.
Also, you got Doug Baldwin leading in receiving with 94 catches for 1,128 yards and 7 touchdowns. He needs to be covered well, along with kick returner Devin Hester. He set an NFL record 20 returns for touchdowns, including a record of 14 on punts and 5 on kickoffs and 1 on a missed field goal attempt return. He's replacing Tyler Lockett, who broke his ankle on December 24th against the Arizona Cardinals. Also on defense, you got Michael Bennett, who's got 5.0 sacks per game and 24 total tackles this season. Now, the Seattle Seahawks defense is about as stout as the Lions defense. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that. I mean, in some instances, these teams are a bit evenly matched in most cases, in most categories here. But it's the one thing that stands out. Seattle, like Green Bay, has the proven metal, and they have the bigger home field advantage here. And as much people want to give grief to Pete Carroll, I think it's safe to say he is a far better coach than Jim Caldwell. So while there's some levels where you could say, hey, these are like 2 evenly matched teams here, and you say maybe the loss of Earl Thomas dampers them, there is a reason why they are the favorites in this game. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. So the injury report looks like this. Travis Swanson is now downgraded to out with a concussion. So the Lions are going to have to replace Travis Swanson again. The Lions haven't won a playoff game since the early 90s, as we know. 1 playoff win since 1957. The spread is 8 points for the Lions, a +8, and the over-under is 44. My prediction, I think I'm going to pick the Seahawks to win in a close one, 24-17. I had it 34-17 on my script, but I'm going to change it to 24-17. It's going to be a close one, but the Seahawks, with their 12-man advantage, which is the crowd, and Russell Wilson will prevail.
Before I get to the predictions, Taylor, I was going to also mention, the Lions may have some things that can help them out. Darius Slay being back, thankfully, in time to you can slap it on Doug Baldwin all day if you want to. But the fact that not only is Travis Swanson starting center out with a concussion issue, Riley Reif, their left tackle, is dealing with a hip problem all week. So you're telling me you're going to be going into a crowd of this raucous, facing a pretty damn good defensive line in Seattle with Michael Bennett, and you're missing potentially two of your starting offensive linemen. Yikes, 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 and more yikes. That's obviously a recipe for disaster. And to piggyback once again off what you said, Taylor, regarding Wilson and the home field advantage, yeah, I'm picking Seattle to win this one. I also have a close game as well, but I say it's going to be a 21-17 type of score. The Lions will cover, but Seattle's just will prove to be too much.
Yep, we both picked Seattle, and we're very close to each other with our predictions. So that's it's actually good news for us. But going to be bad news for the Lions later tonight. So why don't we transition to college football? The Western Michigan Broncos gave the Wisconsin Badgers a good battle, but they lost 24-16 to the 8th-ranked Wisconsin Badgers in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic. Wisconsin almost underestimated Western Michigan, and that's how the game got even closer than people expected. Now, total yards read the Badgers 362, 184 rushing, and the Broncos 280. Not very many penalties in this game. The Badgers 5 penalties for 35 yards. The Broncos only 2 for 15 yards. Third down conversions, the Badgers were 7 out of 11, and the Broncos 5 of 11, but 2 for 2 on fourth down, which is very impressive.
I love it.
Zach Terrell finished 16 of 28 for 157 passing yards, a touchdown and an interception. Jarvion Franklin, 7 carries for 53 yards. Jamari Bogan, 16 for 58. Corey Davis, 6 catches for 73 and a score. Bart Houston for Wisconsin, 11 of 12 for 159 passing yards. Alex Hornibrook, 2 of 2 for 19 and a touchdown pass. Corey Clement, 22 carries for 71 yards and a score. Jazz Peavy, 3 for 50. Troy Fumagalli, 6 catches for 83 yards and a touchdown. The Broncos, in the last few minutes, looked like they were kind of going to cut Wisconsin's 24-10 lead in half, but they missed the extra point kick, obviously, and that set the Broncos. That put the Broncos in a more difficult position. Not terrible, but a more difficult position where they had to score a touchdown and a 2-point conversion to tie it back up at 24, which they never got a chance to because Wisconsin's offense kept getting first downs and they ran out the clock. And the Badgers won 24-16. Now, earlier this week, P.J. Fleck, now the head coach of the Minnesota Golden Gophers, the once head coach of the Western Michigan Broncos, that was a week after the Cotton Bowl. So, what say you, Ed?
First and foremost, regarding the game, there was a reason why I picked Wisconsin to win because obviously they're the bigger, more well-known team, the stronger conference. They're used to these type of big games, new experience, so to speak. This is Western dipping their toe in the water in terms of getting that big-time national presence recognition. But I gotta say though, they held their own. Yeah, it wasn't pretty. It was Wisconsin jumped out to an early 14-0 lead, but Western, they fought back. They didn't quit. Didn't give up. Corey Davis, I believe he's the senior. There was a reason why he was the FBS all-time leader in the category he was in, because when it was dependent on him, when it was needed, he made the big play, made the big catch, kept the drive alive, or kept Western in the game as long as they did. So I wouldn't mind a team taking a shot on him, like, giving him a chance, taking a chance on him rather in the upcoming draft to see what happens. He's not Antonio Brown or Greg Jennings. It's still yet to be seen, but he can be a good quality player when given the chance. So I hope that does work out for him. For Wisconsin, I mentioned before that their bread and butter, their DNA, their backbone is stability with their defense, and then on offense, use their run game and their big uglies up front. Pound the ball down your throat and up your ass, as well as milk the clock, and that's essentially what they did. That's why they had the advantage in time of possession. That's how they were able to salt away the remaining minutes left on the clock in the fourth, because that's just who they are. It's been embedded in them for years and years and years, so why turn away from that formula now? And while it wasn't as a staunch individual performance, collectively, Wisconsin garnered about 184 yards of production on the ground, so it's still almost 200 yards through the rushing attack. And if you're a Wisconsin fan and you see that, you're going to take your chances and lick your chops almost every single time. So between that and just them being used to the stage, it was kind of an easy assumption, which was proven right, that they were going to win this game. But still, nothing to take away from Western. They played their hearts out. They played their asses off. And they made this as close a game as possible. They showed that, hey, we could compete with some of the best. Probably not Bama, because Bama is otherworldly at the moment, as Washington found out. But, the teams like Wisconsin and, the Ohio State or whatever, I would say, I think Western would have a good shot as anybody to make this as competitive game as possible. And it did so in this game, and they got to be too down in the dumps about. They had a hell of a season. Obviously, the best in school history. One would hope that maybe he could use this momentum to possibly aim for higher things next year. That would have been dependent upon PJ Fleck staying around, but obviously he took the better option that was available for him, and a chance to coach, bring what he brought, what he accomplished at Western, try to emulate some of that over in a Power 5 school in Minnesota. Big chance and big opportunity, and I'm not upset at him. If I was a Western fan, I probably wouldn't be. I'd be more understanding more than anything. Stuff like this happens all the time. Luckily for them, they were able to keep their row the boat trademark catchphrase. But PJ, he's going to move on to the brighter things, brighter pastures. And he's going to, it still won't be an easy cakewalk, because Minnesota's going through their own troubles. They just reason why their head coach position became vacant was because Tracy Claeys, I believe is his name, made some comments online on social media regarding showing an enthusiastic support, I should say, for the players when the players decide to boycott the administration as a result of an investigation regarding possible sexual assault. It's one thing to be supportive of your players through tough times. However, when a serious subject such as this comes about, especially in light of other recent horrific scandals of similar nature, i.e. Penn State and Baylor, showing support for the players is one thing, but to be coming off as disregarding and almost disrespectful of the possible victims' plight in this, that was a bad PR first and foremost, but just bad, period. Minnesota obviously could not afford to have any of that linger, so they made the decision. They cut their coach loose. I'm sure the players obviously didn't like that, especially when the coach voiced his support. So PJ Fleck is going to have a lot on his table in terms of trying to not only implement his system and his recruiting and whatnot, but also trying to win over some players that probably are even still are pissed and unhappy at the administration of the university for firing their previous coach.
Mm-hmm. So, Western Michigan, despite their loss, they move up to 12th in the college football playoff rankings, and the Badgers, for underestimating the Broncos, moved down to 10th in those rankings, and that's very reasonable, because as a top dog team in a matchup, you can't take a team like the Western Michigan Broncos for granted, because they're going to come back to bite you, and they almost did that to the Badgers in the Cotton Bowl.
Just a couple of mistakes that they shouldn't have made, i.e. too many fumbles, which was recovered by Wisconsin. And Wisconsin, just like I said, just being I would say the naturally better team that's used to this type of stage.
Yeah, that's true. And we'll get to more of the rankings when we get to the Michigan Wolverines right now.
Touchdown, Michigan!
The Wolverines lost 33-32 to the 11th ranked Florida State Seminoles, the then 11th ranked Seminoles in the Orange Bowl. The Seminoles started to run away in the first half, but the second half was more interesting, yet Florida State held on to win. Michigan had the ball down one in their own territory. There was I think a missed penalty that went Florida State's way, but I guess
there was a miss. Some would say a missed offsides call on Florida State, where when you look at the replay, kind of hard to argue against that. But even still, the way I'll get into more in depth a little bit, but the way Florida State's defensive line was coming at Spade, I doubt, unless something truly miraculous happened, I doubt Michigan was going to convert a 4th and 5. That's just me.
Mm-hmm. So that's actually true. And Michigan's offensive line was not as good as we hoped, because the total yards for the Wolverines just 252, 89 of them rushing in the rushing department compared to Florida State's 371 total and 149 rushing. Michigan had the ball for 34 minutes and 17 seconds compared to Florida State's 25-43. And the Seminoles turned the ball over 2 times, a fumble and an interception, and won by the Wolverines, who committed only 4 penalties for 37 yards. The Seminoles, 7 penalties for 65 yards. Michigan was 7 for 20 on third down, which is not terrible, but still not good. Seminoles...
Still very below average.
Yeah. Seminoles, 3 of 13 on third downs, which is worse. 4th down attempts, Michigan 1 for 2, Florida State 1 for 1. Wilton Spate, in result, 21 of 38 for 463 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Chris Evans, 8 carries for 49. His longest was a 30-yard touchdown run and a score. Davion Smith, 16 carries for 36. Ian Bunting, 3 catches for 40. Amara Darbo, 5 for 36. Jake Butt, 3 for 28. He left the game with a torn ACL, which is devastating because now it's going to be a very difficult road to recovery if he wants to enter the NFL draft.
Well, it's going to hurt his draft out. He's the senior, so he was going to be seen. He was seen as one of, if not the best tight end on the board. So obviously, this is going to hurt his stock with this road to recovery. Wishing nothing but the best here, but it kind of played into the whole argument that why some of the notable players were skipping out on some of these bowl games, i.e. Christian McCaffrey, for instance, because the risk of injury that was there. Unless it was a national championship game, what more did you really have to play for? And unfortunately, that point was exemplified with not just the horrible injury to Jake Butt. Wish him all the best of luck in recovery. But also another thing we got to consider here, which granted didn't happen in the game, but still would hurt him and hurt Michigan nonetheless. Jabril Peppers, I think it's safe to say, right, their most valuable player. He hurt his hamstring in practice before the game, probably the day or the week before. Tried to give it a go, just could not. Very hard, and it was the look on his face throughout the game, especially post-game, when he was giving an interview with literally tears streaming down his face. Very gut-wrenching to watch, especially gut-wrenching for him.
Yeah. It's very gruesome that people can't even bear to see it on live television. and especially for the Michigan Wolverine fans who understandably can't afford to see that happen. Neither can the team itself. For Florida State, DeAndre Francois, 9 of 27 for 222 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. And listen to those numbers. Dalvin Cook, 20 carries for 145 yards and a score.
Oh, man.
And Nyquan Murray, 2 catches for 104 and a touchdown.
Oh, man.
What's going on with those numbers? Michigan's defense seemed to not cover those 2 guys.
Well, one of those instances was where that 92-yard touchdown was absolute broken, busted coverage. Jordan Lewis, no, he did not have a good game by his standards, but still, I think on that one play, he was expecting safety help, did not get it, and as a result, got quote-unquote burned. And of course, like I said, the final play near the end with where if he just turns around just a fraction of a second longer, he either back down that pass or even intercepted. Not a good game for him, but still the defense, he's not the reason why Michigan lost this game. It was an example of, yes, their defense was shredded. It seemed like for every drive that Michigan had, which, seemed to be your productive traditional drive, milking the clock, getting first downs, getting down the field, they couldn't cash in. Field goal, field goal, field goal. None but field goals. Whereas Florida State, boom, big play, boom, gash play, boom, touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. It was staggering. But let's give credit to Michigan here. They could have packed it in after that first half, really that first quarter. They could say, look, things are not going our way. Probably still, because they looked lethargic and unmotivated at times. Probably still thinking, hey, we should be one of the Final Four teams. Maybe that was playing into their mind as well, as not to mention the whole Peppers injury. So they could say, hey, we've come this far. It's just da. But I don't know. Maybe Jim Harbaugh lit a fire under their ass with a halftime speech or whatever. Hey, so we're not going down like this. They woke up, came alive, as monstrous as Florida State's defensive line was with Demarius Walker and among others getting at Wilton Speight. Michigan's defensive line was just as ferocious as well, wreaking havoc and causing hell for Francois all day, who mentioned those numbers. I mean, for instance, his last 16 or 17 passes, he only made 2 completions. 2! So that was definitely a good credit to Michigan's defensive line, forcing the pressure and doing what they need to do. But unfortunately, they just couldn't do much to contain Dalvin Cook, which is a big reason why Florida State won this game. Now, granted, Cook is one of, if not the best running backs in this whole nation, and he's going to be a top priority draft pick because he has entered the draft. So we could be seeing another Ezekiel Elliott type of situation where he shows out against Michigan, gets drafted by a team, and goes on to have a ball-ass rookie season. Still yet to be seen, but still, Michigan, plenty of chances where, despite all that, they had plenty of chances where they could have taken over and possibly put this game away. There was the muff punt that gave by Florida State that gave Michigan the ball at the 1-yard line, yet they only came away with 3 points. Unacceptable. Then there was another instance where, again, they drove the ball down the field. Wilton Speight, I'll admit, there was times where he just looked very, very inconsistent. Now, granted, some of that was due to Florida State's defensive pressure, but still, did not have that great of a game itself. But still, there were times where he mustered up, sucked it up, and drove his team down the field. But just the team as a whole just could not capitalize and cash in. Another piece of evidence here, Exhibit B, you would say, Amari Darboh dropping a surefire touchdown in the end zone, pulling a Jackie Smith of the Cowboys in the Super Bowl against the Pittsburgh Steelers here, which could have really, like I said, 2 missed chances there where the Wolverines could have and should have converted into touchdowns. Instead, they walked away with field goals. And I'll just say right here, while I get the emotion and adrenaline is high while Michigan's making that comeback with the pick six, I don't know what the hell Jim Harbaugh was thinking going for two in that situation. It's the third quarter still. You still have a full quarter left to play in the fourth. Your defense is finally doing something here, helping out your offense. Don't put them further behind the hole by doing something reckless as going for two. And when you factor in what the final margin, the final score would be, yeah, you kind of wish you would have gone for that kick, huh, Jimmy? So I don't know what the hell was his logic or reasoning behind that was. If he tries to explain it, I find it to be bullshit. Yeah, it was just a mix of high and low. Obviously, the lows, unfortunately, prevailed. Another thing to mention here was with Michigan, second straight year, by the way, Jim Harbaugh can finish with a 10-3 record. However, in this instance, Michigan lost 3 of their final 4 games, including two in a row, the Ohio State Spotgate game, and of course this Orange Bowl. Not good. It doesn't project a finishing mentality or doing. You can run up the score in the little sisters of the poor, but when it matters most, you come up short or you choke. Also, another thing to this is in the 6 losses that Michigan has suffered, or not suffered, but has gone through in Jim Harbaugh's tenure so far. 4 of those occurred when Michigan had the lead in the final minute of the game. So I don't know if it's snake bitten. I don't know if it's pressure catching up to it, the enormity of the moment, and forces things to tighten up to where they're not the usual reliable self, and then they choke or whatever. But they've got to fix that if they want to compete and win championships. Obviously, you gotta know when to close it down in the fourth quarter. Simple. You can be great for 3 quarters, but if you do not close in the fourth, that's all you're going to be remembered for. That's the stigma. That's the stigma that LeBron James, in my opinion, unfairly had for a majority of his career until he finally won his first championship. So Michigan's got to overcome that same adversity and that mental block and do what needs to be done to finish it. Because if you don't, chances are you're not going to be celebrating a ring or whatever.
Well, keep in mind LeBron James has won three rings personally, 3 NBA titles. One of them for Cleveland. That was their first ever championship in franchise history. But back to the Michigan Wolverines.
True, but just remember. I know, but back to Michigan. But slight odd topic, but I know. But remember, before that, the first 9 years of his career, LeBron was getting the label of he can't close, he's not clutch, not just with the Cleveland teams, but even his first year in Miami. You saw how horrible he was in the finals against Dallas. Luckily, like you mentioned, he did overcome that. He's now won 3 championships, but I'm using that as a comparison point of apparently what Michigan has to overcome. If they want to take that next step, that next level with Harbaugh, back up their trash talk or whatever, or their hype, and say, hey, we're the baddest mofos in the land for a reason, champions of the West, you got to learn how to finish, you got to learn how to close. LeBron learned that. It's time for Michigan to learn that.
Yeah, they have to back up their whining about the officiating too, and
you're just a crybaby, a coward.
And just play the game and try to finish it themselves. Now you mentioned the big plays that Florida State's offense made in the first quarter. I like to point out 3 deep passes that Michigan's secondary defense allowed. The third one resulting in a touchdown. All of them in the first quarter. That set the tone for Florida State, and Michigan, of course, should never have let any of that crap happen. And had they not, Michigan would have had better control of this game.
Yeah, another thing that pissed me off, it was a 3rd down and 22. You kind of have the feeling that they're going to give the ball to Dalvin Cook anyway, no matter what, because he's been just on fire. But how in God's name do you allow? I don't even care. I don't care if that's Dalvin Cook or Dunn. How do you allow a running back to run that rough shot on you on 3rd and long, 3rd and 22 to be exact? That was when Michigan's defense was finally getting some stops. Michigan's offense was finally clicking. And then that shit happens. That was disgusting to witness. Just, ugh.
You are pathetic!
It's pathetic. And the thing is that made Florida State jump out to a commanding 17-7 lead after one quarter of play, and this is just all kinds of blown coverage for Michigan's defense, and and keep in mind they were ranked number 1 in the country for most of this season until that Spotgate game in Columbus, and that's when things started to go a bit downhill. But Michigan's defense had the chance to shake that off and try to recover and just do their jobs. They didn't do that. They were off to a very slow start mentally, and they paid for it. So with that loss, the Wolverines moved down to 9th in the rankings. The Seminoles of Florida State move up to 8th, and that's saying a lot. So all that being said, that's the result in the rankings that Michigan deserves. And there's both teams are still in the top 10, especially Michigan, but they just could not afford to drop from 6th in the rankings to 9th, because they just were awful, and they couldn't afford to be that awful on defense in the first half, and that was the key factor in that one, and that's what came back to haunt them.
Yeah, but even still, they still had a chance to pull it out. And now you can even point to the fact that because of a poorly mistimed or mixed-executed coverage on the final kickoff, where either Kenny Allen didn't boot it enough through the end zone, or just what the hell was the coverage unit doing, not making the right tackle. That, more than anything, helped out Florida State because it gave them that big field position. I think if Florida State doesn't make that big return, and of course doesn't have that good field position, we're talking about a different swing, because that obviously swung the momentum towards Florida State's way. Let's say Michigan's defense had better field position on that last drive, they possibly could have gotten that final stop. But still, doesn't. At the end of the day, Florida State, they made enough big plays. They deserve to win the game. So hats off to them. It makes you wonder what's next for Michigan. I think from next year, obviously they should be seen as one of the favorites to win the Big Ten. Between them and Ohio State, it's like it's going to be that way for a while between Harbaugh and Meyer. But they should be seen as one of the favorites to win the Big Ten. And it's going to be interesting to see how not really how they perform offensively, but how do they perform defensively, because they're going to be losing some players. They're going to be losing, especially in their secondary, Jordan Lewis, Jinx Stribling, DeMonte Thomas, potentially Jabril Peppers. We don't know. He wasn't definitive on his future after that game. Some may say he probably doesn't want to go out that way. To compare, he would not want his career to end that way. On the flip side, you saw what happened to Jake Butt. So if you're Jabril Peppers, do you really want to take that risk? Potentially could get hurt even more severe, which could further drop your draft stock. So it's a double-sided coin where I would not be upset with either choice that Jabril makes. It's his future, it's his career, it's his decision. I wish him luck with what decision he makes.
Yep, and speaking of decisions, you mentioned that Big Ten battle between Michigan and Ohio State in the near future between Jim Harbaugh and Urban Meyer, the head coaches. Urban Meyer is going to continue to work Jim Harbaugh in the in-game decision making because Jim Harbaugh continues to make those bad in-game mistakes, especially going for two when Michigan scored that go-ahead touchdown with under 2 minutes to go, and Michigan, of course, failed to convert, and that gave Florida State momentum.
No, correction. They did convert. I think you're thinking about the 2-point conversion in the third quarter. Now, the fourth quarter, they had no choice to go for it because, any score would have beaten you. But in this instance, you would have forced Florida State, hey, we got to score a touchdown, which, of course, they did. But even still, Harbaugh made the right decision with that one. I just disagree with how he did with the third quarter decision, which, like I said, in terms of final margin of the game, that 1 point proved to be costly.
Yeah, that was my bad.
But I still agree with you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So with that, that's pretty much all we covered for Michigan football. Now to Michigan basketball.
For three, yes, sir.
The Wolverines men's basketball team lost in overtime to the Iowa Hawkeyes in Iowa City at Kinnick Stadium, 86-83 on New Year's Day. And then they were playing a good Penn State Nittany Lions team in Ann Arbor. They were behind most of the time, but they came back to win 72-69. They had to hold on in the end, but they came back on Wednesday. So their record shows 11-4 overall, 1-1 in the Big Ten. But all in all, a very slow start for the Michigan Wolverines in their Big Ten conference season. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, not the ideal start you would want, especially when, in my opinion, they flat out blew the Iowa game. You had a chance to put it away late or just hold on to a close victory. Now, I mentioned John Polk was his name, was one of the players to look out for Iowa. He definitely backed up my fears and sentiments exactly. Had a well of a game, once again scoring over 20 points, leading his team in any way, shape, or fashion. And then Michigan just not converting, not just making crucial, or just not scoring the crucial baskets that they needed. I'm so tired of Zach Irvin. I really am. With this inconsistent jump shot with his horribly mismanaged long twos and unnecessary threes. Yeah, every once in a while he can, drop 20 for you and make a big play or two. But for the most part, very, very, very unreliable. And thank goodness this is his last season because I can't take it. I couldn't take any more. So, that instance, that's good. There's another player I believe that is catching my attention. It's not Moritz Wagner. There was another player from Michigan. I believe he's their best rebounder. Tall dude, number 3, with the wild hairdo. You have his name, I'm sure, on paper at the moment. But he's been a very good surprise for me as well. That could be...
Well, you got Duncan Robinson. Also, let me look up the roster real quick. Go to mgoblue.com. roster as it continues to load here. You got Xavier Simpson, DJ Wilson, Derek Walton Jr.
DJ Wilson. That's the guy, DJ Wilson. A little bit of a surprise here, well, a pleasant surprise in terms of how he racks up on the boards. Him and Wagner could be a good rebounding duo. Probably the only good representation of paint presence for Michigan, because, like I said, that's not their DNA to be have good paint protection, rim protection, or snatch up boards. They are a jump shooting team by nature, but when their shots are not falling, they need a backup plan. So luckily, you have Mo Wagner and you got DJ Wilson.
Yeah, DJ Wilson is a junior forward that can clean up those boards really good. So can Moritz Wagner. Now, the Wolverines play the Maryland Terrapins today at 3:15 on ESPN2, and then they're at the Illinois Fighting Illini Wednesday at 9 on BTN. Michigan, I believe, has two somewhat difficult games coming up. One against Maryland. They've got a really good college men's basketball program. The Illinois Fighting Illini as well.
Definitely, the Maryland game is more of a, I guess I would say, eyes on the program to look at type of game, see how they perform in terms of long term, how can they compete for the conference title and whatnot. So one of the players to look out is Melo Trimble, the junior for Maryland, number 2, the junior guard. MGO blog states that he is one of their best players, if not their best player. He's going to get to the free throw line a lot. Can be a little bit turnover prone at times, but his shooting is up from this year than it was from last year. So that's a player to definitely look out for. Like I mentioned, for Joke, for Iowa, it's going to be Melo Trimble to look out for in terms for Iowa, in terms for who Michigan needs to contain as best as possible.
Yep, and the Illinois Fighting Illini, they're usually good at home. Michigan has had the Illini's number, though, as of late, but Illinois, they can still burn you.
Yeah, and Michigan, like I said, they're still looking for that road win, so this one will not come any easier.
Yep. Now transitioning to the Michigan State Spartans.
Valentine for the win!
They are 11-5, but 3-0 in the Big Ten. We recall they got a big comeback overtime win at Minnesota. Now we find out that they beat Northwestern 61-52 in East Lansing. A very good game, actually. But Michigan State was kind of getting warmed up before they started to run away with their Rutgers Scarlet Knights game in East Lansing, winning 93-65. That was a game when Miles Bridges returned from his injury, and that's one of the key parts to Michigan State's rout win over the Scarlet Knights.
Yeah, that was going to be a big reason if they were going to make any noise or have a good productive season, regular season or otherwise. It was not just Nick Warren, but also needing a player of Miles Bridges' caliber. Obviously, with him dealing with his injury, we couldn't see any of that. With him coming back now, at the most needed of times. Granted, he didn't have much production. Only had 6 points and 6 rebounds in 17 minutes. Right, you don't want to trying to ease him off, work off that rust. but you could tell his presence was badly missed. Luckily, they were facing Rutgers because it seemed like no matter what, football or basketball, Rutgers is the absolute shits at the moment. But with that being said, you still need to convert. You need to be based on your fundamentals. MSU far better with their making their shots almost 58% total compared to just over 41 for Rutgers, making exactly half of their 3-point shots, which, you know, is a telltale sign you're going to win 9 times out of 10. And they turn the ball over less, which is, again, if you're playing for Tom Izzo, those are some of the things you need to work. You have to consider and concentrate on at the very most. I mentioned before Bridges having 6 and 6 in only limited time, but still that doesn't mean other players didn't have, other players did not contribute at all. Nick Ward still had his lion's share with 15 points. Eron Harris, number 14, he had a big game, scoring 25. So again, now between Harris and Ward, now when you factor in Bridges coming back, that gives MSU a little bit more firepower and offense, obviously, but it just for the team as a whole gives a little bit of a mental boost to say, hey, this is a piece that we missed for a good part of the season now. Now he's back. Let's ease into what we're usually known to do and do what we do best. So, again, I wouldn't be surprised if they close out this regular season on a strong front and has a good, solid top seed in the upcoming NCAA tournament.
Yeah, that's true. That they're going to need Miles Bridges really badly for the rest of the season because they got another difficult schedule coming up. They're at Penn State and with the Nittany Lions at Happy Valley today at 1 on ESPN, and then the rematch at Breslin Center with the Minnesota Golden Gophers Wednesday at 7 on BTN. Again, that 75-74 in overtime win in comeback fashion at Minnesota in their last meeting just a few days after Christmas. The Spartans still have blood on their hands, and the Gophers are seeking revenge.
Yeah, so it's probably a good thing that they had, you could say, that warm up, the sanctioned scrimmage game, you could say, against Rutgers, because they're going to need it. 2 tough teams that they're facing, one on the road, of course, the other looking for retribution, as you mentioned. And then after that, they got to go. This is obviously looking at the future, but you still got to go on the road on a Sunday afternoon to face Ohio State. So good luck with that. Oh, and then the game after that, you got to go face the Indiana Hoosiers in Assembly Hall. Best of luck, gentlemen.
In Bloomington.
Oh, man.
Yep. Very difficult to win.
Yep. Mm-hmm. My Central Michigan Chippewas basketball team is 10-4, but 0-1 in Mid-American Conference play. They won 90-82 over the Chicago State Cougars at McGurk Arena on Friday, but then they got pounded 85-63 at Eastern Michigan to the Eagles inside Convocational Center in Ypsilanti on Tuesday. They're going to have to need Marcus Keene to step up yet again with his high scoring that he once had earlier in the season. He's going to need to pick it up again. Plus, there are other players like Cecil Williams, Josh Kaczynski, Braylon Rayson, and David DeLeo. They're all going to have to step up. And Luke Meyer, he has not done much. He should be a bench player instead of a starter. For God's sake, I don't know why he continues to be a starter and keeps scoring a very low amount of points. For instance, 2 fucking points in most games. That is ridiculous. Ridiculously awful.
You are pathetic!
So the Chippewas continue their Mid-American Conference season at the Northern Illinois Huskies today at 4:30. The Huskies are 8-6, and then they return to McGurk Arena, but they play the 11-3 Akron Zips Tuesday at 7. So, speaking of difficult conference schedules, the Chippewas have one of their own. Now the Pistons, as we transition to pro basketball.
Left sideline 3, and he answers.
They lost to the Hawks 105-98. They beat the Heat on New Year's Day 107-98 in South Beach, which is impressive. But when they returned to the Palace, their defense was nowhere, yet they win one of those two games. They lose 121-116 to Indiana at the Palace on Tuesday. And then on Thursday, they allowed the Hornets to tie it up at 114. The Hornets come all the way back in the last 2 minutes and sink some wide open threes. And Reggie Jackson continues to hit 1 of 2. His one free throw that he made actually gave the Pistons the lead for good. Got the Pistons the win, but the Charlotte Hornets were threatening to win the game at the buzzer. They got the shot off late at the buzzer, and they actually hit the shot. It didn't count. It had to be reviewed, but it didn't count. But they hit their shot after the buzzer. They got it off. They got it off late, understandably, but that shot wasn't covered either. Their defense is atrocious. It's getting even worse.
Marcus Morris was literally with his back turned. I understand trying to look out for the lob, but you gotta know that Marco Bellinelli is a pretty damn good 3-point shooter. So if he sees a chance where he can give himself an open look, he's gonna take it. And he found an opening. He did the whole off the back trick play, and I'll be damned if not for the fraction of a few nanoseconds, it almost worked. And Piston fans would have been real pissed off and upset because they had a big margin, a big lead in that fourth quarter, and almost fucking squandered it. I know Kimball Walker has been outstanding for Charlotte, but that's just inexcusable. One good thing, another good thing besides the win came of note. Boban Marjanovic, as a result of Andre Drummond getting early foul trouble, was given a little bit more playing time than he usually has, and boy, did he ever take advantage of that. He had a terrific game, 15 points, 19 rebounds, became the first Piston to have as close to as many rebounds as that since the big dog, Jerome Williams, had 21 in 1999, I believe. Tobias Harris, who has recently, due to the recent lineup shifts for the starting lineup, he's been moved from the 4 to the bench in place of John Lore. It seemed to affect them not one bit because he still had 25 of his own. As Elias Sports Bureau reports, and as stated by ESPN, the last time that 2 Pistons came off the bench and had at least 25 points and 15 rebounds individually and respectively was Mark Aguirre, and Dennis Rodman, 2 bad boys. Aguirre with 29 points, Rodman with 17 boards. This happened in '93. So, long time since an occurrence such as this happened. Good thing it came with a win instead of a loss. Obviously, things still need to improve on. Their defense, like you mentioned, is still terrible. And I'll be honest, it's a good thing that some of the players from Miami, i.e. Goran Dragic, Hassan Whiteside were not playing in that game on New Year's Day because of Miami. Otherwise, probably looking at losing a 4-game losing streak, which was broken by a literal gift from the heavens, last-second victory because the shot didn't get off in time. But still, a lot of things to improve here between their defense. I mean, Paul George, he's one of the best players in the league, but my goodness, you got to find something to contain him. He dropped 32 on you in the loss to the Pacers this past week as well. So, between, like I said, getting a win against a LeBron-less, against a Cavs team that had LeBron James resting, a Miami Heat team that didn't play Goran Dragic or Hassan Whiteside, and a win against a Hornets team who, quite frankly, probably deserved to get that win, if not for a fraction of a second. We're looking at an ugly string of losses for the Pistons where defense is the main issue. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's, you could probably say, is there a lack of effort from the part of...
I know what's going on.
Lack of effort from either Andre Drummond or Reggie Jackson, or maybe Stan Van Gundy is not connecting to these players enough. But somebody's got to change it because this is a team that was expected to do better than what they did last year, contend for maybe a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference, get close to 50 wins maybe. And as we see, they're almost at the halfway mark record-wise, and we've seen little to no indication that they're going to be that type of team unless something drastic happens.
I know what's going on with their defense. They're not covering. They usually never cover the 3-point arc, and they need to do that a lot more often than not. That's simple. Besides the chemistry, yeah, that's going on too with Reggie Jackson in the lineup. They have a bad record. They've had a bad record since he returned from his injury, from his long-term injury. Reggie Jackson was. Keep in mind, he wanted the ball more than his teammates did, and Stan Van Gundy wasn't too pleased about that. And Stan Van Gundy was one angry son of a bitch, I tell you. So,
but at some point, Stan's got to take some accountability because not only is he the head coach, he is the team president as well of basketball operations. So, this kind of falls on you, Stan. I like you. I think you've been a great addition to this team, this franchise. But you got to fix some things. You got to fix some shit in your own house.
I definitely agree. So that's why the Pistons are 17-21, 11th in the Eastern Conference, and 5th in the Central Division.
AKA last.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Now they're on the West Coast for, I believe, 5 games. They are at the Portland Trail Blazers later tonight at 10. Then they go to Sacramento on Tuesday, Golden State on Thursday, and Utah Friday. I actually saw the Golden State game last night against the Memphis Grizzlies. It went to overtime. The Grizzlies came back from around 10, and they beat the Golden State Warriors in overtime, 122 to 116, I believe.
I think probably 124, 119, but even still,
124.
Gracious of Golden State. I think it was still gracious of Golden State to continue to bless us with internet memes of just constantly, continuously blowing leads. I mean, first you blow the 3-1 lead in the finals to the Cavs, then you blow the 14-point fourth quarter lead to them on Christmas Day, and now you lose a game during a point in which you were up by 24 points. Oh my goodness! I think they set themselves up for this type of ridicule. I'll be honest, but it's good enjoyment. But I expect them to be fully remotivated and composed because they'll be playing the Pistons again on the 12th. It's going to be apparently a primetime game. It's a late game, but it'll be a primetime game on TNT. And yikes. I'm not looking forward to that. Not to mention, right, they got turned right back around and play Utah, which has been a good team. Probably could have made the playoffs last year. It was a fringe playoff team last year, and I think it's been doing better than what the Pistons are doing this year. So, sometimes it's always these West Coast trips that always seem to be the undoing for the Pistons in some instances of not having good showing, good record. But this one looks very brutal more than anything. You got to face the Portland Trail Blazers, who great timing for them. They just got back Damian Lillard, one of the best point guards in the league. He in his first game back had a 2010 type of game. Then you got to face Sacramento with DeMarcus Cousins, arguably the best center in the game. You know he's going to abuse our asses in the paint. Then the aforementioned Golden State and Utah games, and then you close it out with a matchup against the Lakers. Some were thinking this is probably a rebuild year, first year post-Kobe era. But they got some good young studs on their team, does LA. And they've looked not as belligerent as some would expect to see. Looking for the record right now, waiting for us to load. They're still pretty bad. They're 14-26, but they've shown better promise of what's to come in the future. So it wouldn't surprise me if they just ran this is off the floor, because both teams seem to be even level in terms of how we've been performing as a whole. Pistons probably had the better expectations, but they've been completely underwhelming so far. And like I said, this West Coast trip, especially when you have that back-to-back of Golden State and Utah, looks very brutal. So I would be very optimistic, not optimistic, but hopeful and almost in a praying way that they can somehow manage to get 2 wins off of that whole trip. Because that looks, like I said, it looks brutal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Chances are they might go either 0-5 or 1-5 if they happen to steal one of those games. I'd say the Pistons have better chances to beat the Blazers and the Kings before getting thrashed by the Warriors and Jazz. 4 games coming up this upcoming week. I believe I'm going to have to check the entire schedule for how long that road trip is again, but taking 2 out of the first...
It's 5 games.
Yeah, it's 5. Yep. Thank you.
It's 5 games. Yeah.
So that's the entire schedule. Portland at 10, and then the next 3 games at 10:30 before their last game. Now the Red Wings. They lost 5-4 in overtime to the Toronto Maple Leafs in the 100th Centennial Classic. They fell behind 4-1. They gave up 4 unanswered goals to the Maple Leafs in the third period. Then they came back in dramatic fashion to tie it up at 4. Anthony Mantha finished with 2 goals, including the equalizer with 1.1 second left, and picked up an assist. He almost got a hat trick. He made a bid for one. He even made a bid for one. Got a shot on goal in overtime for a hat trick before Austin Matthews won it with his second goal of the game in overtime against Jared Coro. And then the Red Wings headed to Anaheim. They gave Andreas Athanasiou a healthy scratch. That's Jeff Blashill. And they lost 2-0. And they found out. And they tried turning to Steve Ott, assuming he was the answer to their power play. And of course, Steve Ott was not the answer on that one. he has done nothing this season compared to Riley Sheehan, who only has 6 assists. And their power play still has not converted at all. They're 11.3%, last in the NHL. And that's saying way too damn much.
Good Lord.
But then...
That's one reason why they...
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, but then Andreas Athanasiou was back in the lineup, and the Red Wings won 4-0. Athanasiou got a goal and 2 assists. Thomas Vanek, 2 goals. Mantha, a goal and assist. And Jared Cole earned his first NHL shutout.
I love it.
That was a first line team effort. I may say. It's all because of those guys that got the Red Wings the win. Nobody else on this team could have done that. The Red Wings were taking on a tough Los Angeles Kings team at Staples Center, and they won 4-0 because of those guys. After Andreas Athanasiou was a healthy scratch in Anaheim when he should not have been. No thanks to that rat Jeff Blashill again. Once again turning to Steve Ott. And yet even their power play still didn't convert in LA. That's why they're 11.3% last in the NHL. That's one thing I believe they'll never clean up this season. Something major has to change, like after the season or right now or sometime in between.
In terms of, if you want to be drastic, it's just one easy remedy. You give Andreas Athanasiou more playing time. You don't bullshit him with healthy scratches. Like, really? So you mean he deserves to sit down more than whatever fuck up or mistake that Jonathan Ericsson might have made on the ice, not over the past few weeks, let alone over the past few years?
Yeah, Jonathan Ericsson made a turnover. He turned the damn puck over, and the Ducks scored their first goal of the game. And yeah, Ericsson easily, nonchalantly gave the puck away in the Detroit zone, and what do you know? A goal. Just like usual. He is the main culprit that the Red Wings are losing their games. Jonathan Ericsson, his no movement clause should be terminated, and so should his long-term contract immediately. But Ken Holland, of course, too loyal to do so. He's a piece of shit as well. He's gone from best to worst in the NHL and among general managers. Decide to keep him and roll on with his contract. Fuck you, Ken Holland, you moron.
Yeah.
And of course,
double for me as well.
Yeah, and want to know what else? An article from Darren Dreger writes that Ken Holland's plan is to stay the course.
You are pathetic!
And of course, that's never going to work because of the roster that they have right now. There's the system that they have going on with them right now. That's just pathetic. I mean, it's to bottle it up in a nutshell. Is we're running out of time here. Ken Holland, just the same old general manager. The Red Wings are going to be very terrible for an even longer time if his contract is renewed after next season. In their first ever season at Little Caesars Arena, which is going to be a disgrace. But hopefully, if they miss the playoffs, then Ken Holland might get the message like Jeff Blashill tried to send to Andreas Athanasiou. Andreas Athanasiou, by the way, does not deserve to be sent any messages. Jet Blashill, even he knows how great Andreas Athanasiou always is. You can never underestimate him that way or in any way, shape, or form. You have to use him as an everyday player, regardless of the slump that he's been going through. You still need him. He's a valuable goal scorer along with Anthony Mantha. And you don't ever bench him in key games against the Anaheim Ducks, for Christ's sake.
Unless Athanasiou had pictures of Blashill fucking goat, I cannot explain why he was a healthy scratch. I just don't. It's completely incomprehensible.
Yep, enough said there. The Red Wings are in San Jose later tonight at 10:30 against the Sharks at SAP Center. And then they go to the Central Division regions and play their arch rival, the Chicago Blackhawks, Tuesday at 8:30, and then they play the Stars in Dallas Thursday at 8:30. So 3 tough teams to take on before they return home and play the Pittsburgh Penguins next week. The week after, actually.
Oh, that's a good homecoming treat. Well, so that's a good homecoming treat. Woohoo!
Yep.
Looking forward to Sid Crosby running the score up on our ass.
Yeah. Jonathan Erickson giving the puck away to Crosby and another shit. So one more team to cover, and then we'll get to 5 questions here.
That one is long gone.
Real quick, the Tigers are looking for a low-cost veteran center fielder to replace Cameron Maben. If they don't do that, Tyler Collins and Jacoby Jones are internal options. But they got to find some way to avoid Tyler Collins and Jacoby Jones. Jacoby Jones is better than Tyler Collins, but the Tigers have got to do something to fill that void.
This is where potentially maybe you want to consider the Stephen Moya option, but again, he's not that far off better with his defense. He gives you good production. He's feast or famine, but more often than not, he can give you even more reliable or dependable, rather, to deliver a hit on off with his bat than, say, Jones or Collins. But, more likely they're going to have to look out for, because I'm trying to look online to see what any free agent center fielders might be available for them to go after. But it's not looking too deep of a pool, essentially. So they're definitely going to be looking and searching between now and spring training.
Mm-hmm. So that's going to cover the Tigers for now. We'll pick up on that later.
That one is long gone.
So it's time for 5 questions. Let's wrap this up, Ed.
Yep, bring in the new year in style and let them rip, Taylor.
It's time for 5 questions on the Michigan Sports Truth.
Question number 1, are the Lions likely done after losing to the Packers?
Well, the mental block that it puts on you from losing 3 games in a row to close the season will give you that attitude no matter how you do, especially if you still somehow make the playoffs. I don't care what they say of, it's a new season. No, bullshit. That's playing in the back of your head that you lost 3 games in a row. So that could be, like I mentioned before, you're facing just a solid team as Green Bay, in my opinion, no matter what issues they could have, either defense or injuries or lack of consistency. But you're going to their house, a very formidable place to play in, I might add, a very stout secondary, or at least some stout players on the defense, even if it's missing Earl Thomas. So we gave the predictions earlier. We both picked Seattle to win. We both have a close game. So, in my opinion, yes, to answer your question.
Next question.
I would agree. Question number 2, do the Michigan Wolverines still have a chance to make the college football playoff next season later this calendar year? I think they're going to have to earn it.
Well, they'll be considered one of the favorite. If they, like I said, they'll probably be 7 or 8, probably even 9 or whatever. How the initial rankings come out, they'll be a top 10 team regardless. As long as they take care of business, they'll have a good first impression because they're going to open the season in Cowboy Stadium against the Florida Gators. So that'll be a good first test to see how far can this team go for the rest of the year. It's going to be dependent upon, certain players coming back or whatnot. The big question mark is Jabril Peppers. Defensively, there'll be more concerns. But offensively, I think you should be fine. Well, Spade comes back. Yes, Davion Smith is graduating, but now you got Karan Higdon, you got Chris Evans, Eddie McDoom. That versatile players that you can use either in the backfield or even in the slot receiver spot. In terms of other tight end / wideout options, yes, Amar Darko, Jay Chesson, and Jake Butt are leaving as well. But you got Khalid Hill, who's coming back for his 5th year, and you got Ty Wheatley Jr., a big kid for his size, reminds me of Devin Funchess a little bit. You can probably use him in a lot of different situations as well. So, offensively, I don't have too much of a worry. It's just a real question mark. How can they replace the players that they had on defense? Now, luckily, you do have some recruits coming in that could fit your style. Not to mention, you still got Rashawn Gary. For instance, he was a freshman. He looked pretty damn good. Last year. I expect even better from him from this season. Mike McCray, he's coming back for his senior year, unless he doesn't go early. Mike McCray. So between McCray and Rashawn Gary, that could be 2 staples in terms of building your defensive round. And at least you have, Don Brown and Tim Drevino, your coordinators for each, coming back as well to help you out. Very interesting season. Question mark. A lot of questions of how can they perform without. Because I think it's safe to say, right, the DNA of Michigan, how they performed, was built on their defense. Now, let's see how they can do replacing the members of said defense for this season. But they should be a good contender as anybody to reach that college football playoff.
Next question.
Question number 3, are the Western Michigan Broncos working their way up to the college football playoff in the near future, or does the rest of the Mid-American Conference need to step up their game?
I think it's the schedule. It's the conference as a whole. Western may take a step back this year because you're going to be losing some players to the graduation. Not to mention your head coach is gone now. As well, that was in my opinion, a source of your motivation to help get you up to where this team performed the way they did. So, with those factors considered, I think Western's going to take a bit of a step back this year. They probably could still be good enough to win the MAC. But it's up to the conference to really up its ante, and obviously it won't be one of the big Power 5, but if we have more teams, more seasons the way Western did, coming out of other divisions and conferences like the MAC and whatnot, that'd be good overall in terms of finding the right parity in this current system the way it is for college football.
Next question.
Question number 4, how long is General Manager Ken Holland going to stay the course with the Red Wings? I think some chances are if they miss the playoffs, he might not.
If they miss the playoffs, he probably won't be fired by Chris Ilitch, but he'll some sort of deal be worked out where he won't be the GM, but he'll deal. And the thing of it is, it's probably the deal he should have taken years ago, which could have brought Steve Eisman over. He'll take a promotion. You'll get a promotion upstairs to maybe be president. But in terms of GM, they'll probably have to find a new GM if and when they miss the playoffs this year. Hopefully. I doubt it because we'll you have to see from Chris Ilitch. And even though I might put it out there as a sort of sarcasm / blinding optimism, no, there's no way in hell Steve Eisman is going to want to leave the comfort position that he has in Tampa to come to here, especially when it may, if you believe what Jeff Moss says on Twitter, there's no way in hell he wants to work for Chris Ilitch. So, sorry fans, if you want a new GM for next year, if you want a new GM for next year, most likely he's probably not going to be Stevie Y. So, look up for other wish list contenders.
Yeah, you can follow Jeff Moss, the founder and editor-in-chief of the Detroit Sports Rag, on Twitter at Jeff Moss DSR, and like his Facebook page, DetroitSportsRag.com, and join the group Detroit Sports Rag, all in one word.
Next question.
Finally, question number 5. What are the chances the Tigers pick up a low-cost veteran center fielder?
Probably a bit low. I think lower than what the chances were for them to pick up Alex Avila. I just don't see it happening unless, like I said, there's some type of sign and trade involved, or we see something of that effect. Most likely, they'll look internally to find that good, or at least adequate center fielder. Because, like I said, the idea to move Cameron Maybin, obviously, it's going to bite him in the ass long term. So you try to remedy that. You try to cover that slice wound with a bandage as much as you possibly can. That's what they're going to try to do here by looking at probably either Collins or Jones for that center field spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would go with Jacoby Jones instead of Tyler Collins.
I agree with that one.
So that wraps up our 5-question segment, and for all the listeners and fans out there, if you want to answer those questions, just replay the episode and answer them in the comment bank below this episode. That wraps up episode 246 of Spreaker's feed on the Michigan Sports Truth, the beginning of 2017 edition. Ed, I'll talk to you again next week, probably Wednesday, on episode 247.
Yep, looking forward to it. Take care, enjoy your weekend, and listeners, thank you as well. Let's start this year off right. We'll see you next week.
Absolutely. So before I sign off, I want to remind everyone to share this episode and our entire podcast on social media. Have their friends share that as well, and follow me on Spreaker as Taylor Phillips online at Spreaker.com, because I want to tell them that the Michigan Sports Truth podcast is in search of local advertising sponsors. If anyone has a business that's interested in sponsoring this program, you can follow Sports Radio Detroit on Twitter at Sports Radio DET, Sports Radio Det, and send them a direct message or email them at Sports Radio Detroit in the contact section. Also like their Facebook page at Sports Radio Detroit. Also like their Facebook and join their Facebook group. And finally, find their podcasts available on iTunes and Podbean. For Ed Smith, I'm Taylor Phillips. Follow us on Twitter at DT2Phillips and at EdSmith313. And like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth, and join our Facebook group. I'll talk to you next week on Spreaker. That's Wednesday for episode 247. I'll talk to you later tonight on TalkShoe for the in-game chat with Louis Tenor and Matt Pierce. Thanks very much for listening, and Happy New Year. TTFN, ta-ta for now.
Bon appetit.